right. Well, let's end with a little bit of fun. We have our SALT segment, and you chose the topic today, but I absolutely love it, Michael. Do you want to present it?
Yes. So Elon Musk is one of the most overrated people in America. And in a funny way, I actually don't. I mean, I'm not into kicking people while they're down. Obviously, the guy's a billionaire. He's incredibly well networked. He's not really down. Also, I can never kick anybody as good as the amazing Azalea Banks. And if you go back several months, whoo, did she lay into Elon Musk? Very funny, very fucked up, worth looking at. Anna, even you and I could never be that mean.
No.
But I do, although there's a lot of accuracy in a lot of the things Azalea says. That being said, Elon Musk, the important context around this and the reason it's relevant to criticize him is that this is somebody that pop culture, from Hollywood to editorial pages to even some genuine currents in the culture, people doing work for him that weren't getting paid to do it and didn't have any relationships with him. There was this belief that this guy was going to solve the climate crisis, reinvent transportation, generate mass space travel. And it's clear that the beef is not in being innovative or being scientific or trying new things. This is always like a bullshit tactic that people always say when you criticize some myth like Elon Musk. Like, oh, you oppose taking risks. You oppose technological innovation. No, I don't. What I oppose is myth making and hero worship about singular capitalists. Because one, this is simply not how the world works. Innovation, scientific progress are always collective efforts. Always. And no single company or individual is going to solve big macro problems, particularly when those big macro problems, like the climate crisis, are fundamentally problems of capitalist production and cannot be dealt with in an infinite growth model. It's impossible. Capitalism's on a collision course with planet Earth. And then I will say, which is where he's and has a myth that is so ridiculous that it has not only negatively impacted culture, I think it's negatively impacted him. I mean, we've seen him freak out multiple times, hurt, stop, do the most awkward weed smoking sesh on Joe Rogan I've ever seen in my life. Did I freeze it?
Yeah, you're freezing a little bit, but I do want to just chime in real quick on the weed smoking, because for me, I don't care. I smoke weed. I don't care, right? I don't judge people for doing that. For me, it's like a relaxation thing at the end of the day. But he was very clearly in the middle of having a public meltdown, via Twitter. There was a little bit of it on that podcast episode. And to me, there was like this element of self-medicating, which, I'm speculating when it comes to Elon Musk, but there is self-medicating all throughout the country right now. I mean, part of the reason why we're still grappling with this opioid epidemic is because people are struggling. They're struggling to provide for themselves and their families. They're unfulfilled with the work that they're doing. They feel like they're tied to jobs that end up going nowhere, these dead-end jobs. And so like the self-medicating, we got to think about like what this system does to us physically, right? What it does to our minds, what it does to our bodies, what we do to kind of like escape the realities, the harsh realities that we're coping with right now. So yeah, it was interesting to see that conversation on Joe Rogan and like his just willingness to smoke pot in a moment where he's obviously not in the right healthy frame of mind.
I don't judge people for doing pretty much anything, certainly not smoking weed, but I judge you for how you smoke weed, and it didn't look good. Now, Elon Musk, speaking of freaking out, he's from the beginning of Corona, he's insisted on having like a contrarian take. And I'll just say, look, be very wary of contrarian takes that overlap with what basically business wants, which is us to just get back to work. And so from the beginning, he's criticized people for panicking. He basically said something effective like, people don't make intelligent decisions when they panic. It's like, well, right. That's sort of a yes, kind of definitionally. There's truth to that. Back in March, he predicted that there would be no new after an article that said no new domestic cases of corona in China, which of course, when that was reported, this was because of an enormous effort that China had put into dealing with it while the United States had been asleep at the wheel. And he basically said, based on current trends, we'll probably be close to 0 new cases in the U.S. by the end of April. Now, of course, that was not correct. And that maybe was part of the reason that he freaked out on a recent earnings call with shareholders of Tesla. This is April 30th, this report from CNN. Give people back their goddamn freedom, Musk said, adding that the coronavirus shutdowns are taking a toll on his company's manufacturing and ability to source supplies.
Mm-hmm.
I would call
and
it,
then,
just really quick, I would call it forcibly imprisoning people in their homes against their constitutional rights. And in my opinion, and breaking people's freedom in ways that are horrible, wrong, and why people came to America and built this country, it's an outrage. Now, no doubt, huge civil liberties questions here. We all got to keep track of. We can't just we can't let only the right-wing people and the oligarchs talk about that. But I think it's clear where Elon Musk's anxiety is coming from. And it's also clear that maybe this guy is not helping himself because Tesla's stock price was not helped by this tantrum.
Exactly. And that's the main point to covering this and talking about his very public meltdown about this pandemic, because it's not about the fact that the president, the leader of this country, has handled this poorly from the very beginning. We now have more than 65,000 Americans who have died from the virus, more than 1 million confirmed cases of the virus, and that's in a system that doesn't even have widespread coronavirus testing available yet. So the numbers are likely higher. He's not worried about the human lives. He's worried about getting those humans back to work so he doesn't suffer financially. His shareholders don't suffer financially. His board won't be on his ass about loss of earnings. Like, those are the motivating factors behind his very public commentary. And I think that we should be very sensitive to the type of marketing that we're seeing from people like Elon Musk and Texas's Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, when they use wording like freedom or liberty or the Constitution to prematurely push people back to work. Because it's not about your freedom. If they were genuinely concerned about freedom, Elon Musk would be screaming about what the DOJ is doing in pushing federal judges to detain suspects indefinitely. That is a violation of human rights in this country. And I don't hear Elon Musk, shouting about that from the mountaintops. No, he's talking about what needs to be done to benefit him personally. But he's marketing this in a way that makes it appear as though he's concerned about our liberties, our rights, and, our constitutional protections. That's just not the case. What motivates him is money. What motivates Dan Patrick is money. What motivates Tucker Carlson is money. I don't care how many segments Tucker Carlson does about how the working class is getting screwed. At the end of the day, Tucker Carlson is pushing people to get back to work prematurely, knowing well that they would risk their lives in order to do so. And when it comes to the frontline workers who are out there right now, they're also risking their lives. And you have these bad actors, dishonest players, arguing that they don't deserve hazard insurance or hazard pay. They're just disingenuous, ridiculous crybabies who, again, only care about themselves, and we need to be clear about that. But at the same time, I agree with you, Michael. We need to also focus on how civil liberties, historically speaking, have been snatched away from us through various crises that the country has undergone. And we're experiencing that right now. When the EPA tells corporations, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Don't worry about polluting our water and our air. Go ahead, have at it. We should be outraged about that. And we should be outraged that Congress was unable to really help Americans with the financial relief that they need in order to stay home, right? A lot of people, yes, some people are whiny and they're being manipulated by right-wing groups, but there are people who own these small businesses and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to keep those businesses open or sustainable while this pandemic goes on. And it's because Congress gave that massive bailout to corporations, but gave small businesses nearly jack shit. So it's
100%, 100%. Yeah. And I just say too, look, back to Elon, if you're on social media in any way, shape or form, caping for Elon Musk, you're a massive cuck. And the bigger point that you're pointing to, Anna, which is 100% right, and also just goes back to the same dynamic we're in again and again and again. Tucker Carlson is going to build following. He is going to have attention because he does more segments that are real about the state of the country than anything you'll see almost entirely on MSNBC. And conversely, in addition to the moral reasons that we reject the xenophobia, it is a fundamental contradiction to have identitarian politics because it does divide the working class and it does undermine collective efforts. And collective efforts and labor power are the only way to deal with the problems that he does talk about better than a lot of liberal pundits. And that's why we need an actual real left in this country. And it's also why you should look up what Azalea Banks said about Elon Musk a couple of months ago, because we're still in quarantine. You need to laugh.
Definitely.